The Alaskan wilderness stretches endlessly under a vast sky, where the Brown family once built their unconventional life away from civilization. A bearded figure moves through dense forest, axe in hand, familiar yet somehow different from the man viewers came to know on their screens. Where did Matt Brown, the oldest son of the wilderness family, truly disappear to? What struggles has he faced away from the cameras that once documented his every move? And how much of what we saw reflected the reality of his complicated journey? Stay tuned, because by the end of this story, you'll know exactly what really happened to Matt Brown from Alaskan Bush People, and where things stand as of September 2025. Let's dive in. For 9 seasons, Discovery Channel's Alaskan Bush People captivated millions with its portrayal of the Brown family living off the grid in the remote wilderness. At the heart of this rugged clan was Billy Brown, the patriarch who led his wife Amy and their 7 children into a life seemingly untouched by modern convenience. Among those children, Matt Brown stood out as the eldest son, a position that carried both privilege and extraordinary pressure within the family's unusual dynamic. To viewers, he appeared as the experienced hunter, the skilled builder, and the heir apparent to the Brown family legacy. His bearded face and quiet demeanor became staples of the show's appeal, representing the frontier spirit that drew audiences in season after season. But television rarely tells the whole story. Behind the carefully edited footage lay a more complex reality, one that would eventually lead to Matt's departure from both the show and his family. The wilderness wasn't just a backdrop for entertaining television. It was the setting for very real struggles with isolation, identity, and personal demons that would shape Matt's journey long after the cameras stopped rolling on his story. Born on September 7, 1982, Matthew Jeremiah Brown entered a world very different from the one viewers would later associate with him. Contrary to the show's narrative of a family always living in the bush, Matt spent his early years in more conventional settings before the Browns began their nomadic lifestyle. His childhood unfolded against the backdrop of the family's transitions, moving between Texas, Alaska, and various points in between. Young Matt learned to adapt quickly, picking up wilderness skills alongside the normal challenges of growing up. Early home videos and family accounts describe a curious child with an inventive streak, fashioning toys from natural materials and developing the resourcefulness that would later serve him in the Alaskan wilderness. Billy Brown, with his booming voice and larger-than-life personality, instilled in his eldest son a deep respect for nature and self-reliance. Matt's mother, Ami, with her gentle but resolute presence, taught him compassion and family loyalty. These formative influences created the foundation of Matt's character, a blend of frontier toughness and surprising sensitivity that viewers would eventually glimpse on screen. Long before Discovery Channel discovered the Browns, Matt was learning to hunt, fish, and build shelters in the wilderness, practical skills that would one day make for compelling television, but were then simply the necessities of his unusual upbringing. The skills Matt developed during these years weren't merely for survival. They represented a way of life and a philosophy passed down through generations. In footage from early episodes, you can see the practiced ease with which he sets traps, identifies edible plants, and constructs makeshift tools. These weren't abilities acquired for the camera. They were the result of years spent learning from his father in the isolated wilderness. As he grew older, Matt began to develop his own particular talents within the family system, becoming especially adept at mechanics and repurposing salvaged materials, turning what others might see as junk into valuable resources for the family's unique lifestyle. But alongside these practical lessons came more complex teachings about the family's place in the world. The Browns positioned themselves as outsiders by choice, a wolf pack, as Billy often called them, set apart from mainstream society. For a young man forming his identity, this created a powerful sense of belonging within the family unit, but also established a fundamental tension with the outside world that would later contribute to Matt's struggles. These formative years laid the groundwork for both Matt's strengths and vulnerabilities. His remarkable self-sufficiency alongside a certain naivety about the wider world beyond the wilderness. The Brown family's journey to television began long before producers ever arrived in Alaska. Billy Brown had already written several books about the family's unconventional lifestyle, creating a foundation of public interest in their story. But it was in 2014 that everything changed for the family, and for Matt in particular. Discovery Channel premiered Alaskan Bush People, transforming the Browns from an obscure wilderness family into reality television stars virtually overnight. The first season introduced viewers to the family's unusual way of life in the Alaskan bush, with Matt featured prominently as the experienced eldest son who had mastered the family's wilderness skills. The show's premise was instantly captivating. A modern family choosing to live as if from another century, building homes from scratch, hunting for sustenance, and creating their own society deep in the wilderness. Matt's role in these early episodes centered around his experience and capability. The son who could be trusted with the most challenging tasks, from dangerous hunts to complex construction projects. Viewers watched as he helped build Browntown, the family's makeshift settlement in the Alaskan wilderness, showing a natural ease with the camera. That made him an early fan favorite. But the transition from privacy to public scrutiny came with unexpected challenges. Matt, then in his early 30s, suddenly found himself thrust into a spotlight he hadn't sought out. While the family had agreed to document their lifestyle, the reality of having camera crews following their daily lives and millions of viewers analyzing their every move created pressures that would eventually contribute to the fractures in Matt's relationship with both the show and his family. This pivotal moment marked the beginning of a new chapter in Matt's life, one where his identity became increasingly tied to his portrayal on screen, for better and for worse. The years that followed the show's premiere represented the peak of Matt's public visibility and, outwardly at least, success. Alaskan Bush People grew from a curiosity into a bona fide hit for Discovery, with the Brown family becoming unlikely celebrities. Seasons 2 through 5 showcased Matt's distinctive contributions to the family's survival and the show's entertainment value. His creative approaches to problems, building a refrigerator powered by a water wheel or fashioning a shower system from recycled materials, highlighted both his ingenuity and the show's appeal. Matt's segments often provided the practical demonstrations of bush living that viewers tuned in to see, balanced with moments of levity and his trademark dry humor. During this period, Matt developed what appeared to be his on-screen persona, the capable but somewhat eccentric oldest brother who marched to his own beat. He became known for his distinctive appearance, his wild beard and handmade clothing, as well as his philosophical musings about nature and family. Viewers responded to his authenticity, or what seemed like authenticity within the constructed reality of the show. Fan sites and social media accounts dedicated to the program frequently cited Matt as a favorite, appreciating his skills and seemingly genuine nature. Behind the scenes, however, the reality was more complicated. The production schedule demanded long hours of filming, often requiring multiple takes of supposedly spontaneous activities. The family's actual living arrangements reportedly differed significantly from what was portrayed on screen, with the Browns allegedly spending time in more conventional housing when not filming. For Matt, navigating the growing gap between his televised image and his actual experiences created increasing dissonance. Here's where it gets complicated. While presenting an image of harmonious wilderness living to millions of viewers, Matt was reportedly beginning to struggle with the pressures of fame and the lifestyle it both portrayed and obscured. By 2016, fractures had begun to appear in the carefully constructed narrative of Alaskan Bush People, and in Matt's personal life. Reports emerged that Matt had entered rehabilitation for alcohol abuse, marking the first public acknowledgement of his struggles with substance issues. This development came as a shock to many viewers who had seen only the capable wilderness expert portrayed on screen. The show addressed Matt's absence briefly, with Billy explaining that his eldest son was dealing with personal issues, but the full extent of his challenges remained largely private at that time. According to later interviews and social media posts from Matt himself, this period marked the beginning of a profound personal crisis. The pressures of fame, the artificial nature of reality television production, and pre-existing vulnerabilities had created a perfect storm for addiction issues to take hold. Matt has since spoken about using alcohol as a coping mechanism for anxiety, and the strange disconnection that came with living two parallel lives: the wilderness dweller on camera and the reality TV personality off-screen. This first rehabilitation stay would not be Matt's last. In 2018, he reportedly sought treatment again, this time stepping away from filming for an extended period. The show continued without him, with the narrative focusing on the family's relocation to Washington State following Amy Brown's cancer diagnosis and treatment. Matt's absence was explained as his need to focus on his sobriety. But behind the bland statements lay a more complex reality of strained family relationships and differing perspectives on his struggles and recovery. Legal issues further complicated this period. In 2018, Matt faced accusations of reckless driving and allegedly operating a vehicle without a license in Washington State. While relatively minor in the grand scheme of legal troubles, these incidents highlighted the ongoing instability in his life during this turbulent time. The private struggles had begun to spill into public view, creating a stark contrast with the capable wilderness expert viewers had come to know from earlier seasons. And that's when everything changed. In 2019, Matt Brown made the difficult decision to leave Alaskan Bush People entirely. This departure wasn't just a hiatus from filming. It represented a fundamental break from both the show and, in many ways, from his family. Reports suggest that tensions had been building for some time between Matt and production, as well as between Matt and his father Billy regarding finances and the direction of the show. While the exact nature of these disagreements remains private, Matt has since suggested on social media that issues of compensation and creative control played a significant role in his decision to walk away. The official narrative presented on the show was minimal. Matt was focusing on his sobriety and personal health with the family's support. But behind the scenes, a more complicated story was unfolding. In later social media posts, Matt would allege that he felt financially exploited during his time on the show, claiming he hadn't received fair compensation for his contributions to the family's television success. These allegations, while difficult to verify independently, point to the kinds of tensions that often arise in family business ventures, especially those thrust into the spotlight of reality television. Matt's departure coincided with other significant changes for the Brown family. They had completed their relocation to Washington State, where they established a new homestead they called North Star Ranch. The family patriarch Billy was facing his own health challenges, which would ultimately lead to his passing in February 2021. The show's focus shifted to these new developments, with Matt's absence becoming an unstated but permanent feature of the later seasons. For many fans, the family dynamic never quite felt the same without the eldest Brown son, whose practical skills and quiet charisma had been central to the show's early appeal. Now, if you're wondering how we got here, the aftermath of Matt's departure reveals much about both the man and the media phenomenon he was once part of. Following his exit from the show, Matt largely retreated from public view, at least initially. According to reports, he spent time in California, working through his sobriety journey and establishing a life independent of both the show's narrative and his family's influence. This period appears to have been one of significant personal reflection and change, as he worked to define his identity apart from the character viewers had come to know on screen. By late 2020, Matt began to re-emerge on his own terms, establishing a presence on social media that offered glimpses into his new life and perspective. His Instagram and YouTube accounts revealed a man in transition, still bearing the recognizable features that fans remembered, but speaking with a new openness about his struggles and hopes. In these posts, Matt shared his continuing sobriety journey, his efforts at self-sufficiency through farming and crafting, and occasional reflections on his time in the spotlight and his complicated family dynamics. The death of Billy Brown in February 2021 marked another pivotal moment in Matt's story. According to reports, Matt did not attend his father's funeral, suggesting that the rift between them remained unresolved at the time of Billy's passing. This painful reality underscores the depth of the estrangement that had developed, beyond creative or financial disagreements to something more fundamental in their relationship. Matt acknowledged his father's passing on social media with a brief but respectful statement, but the distance, both physical and emotional, between Matt and the rest of the Brown family seemed to have solidified by this point. The years since have seen Matt charting his own course, largely separate from the public identity that Alaskan Bush People created for him. As of September 2025, Matt maintains a modest but engaged following on social media platforms, where he shares updates on his life and projects. Currently, reportedly residing in Washington State, not far from his family, but maintaining his independence, he has focused on sustainable living practices, artistic pursuits, and maintaining his sobriety, which he has spoken about reaching significant milestones in. Matt's current lifestyle appears to blend some elements of the self-sufficiency featured on the show with a more grounded approach to modern living. His social media showcases gardening projects, handcrafted items, and occasional outdoor adventures that reflect his continuing connection to nature without the extreme isolation portrayed in earlier years. He has spoken about finding peace in this balance and in the authentic connections he's formed away from the cameras. Relationships with his family remain complicated, according to available information. While there have been reports of occasional contact with some siblings, particularly Brother Bear, Matt appears to maintain significant distance from the family's public life and the ongoing production of Alaskan Bush People, which has continued without him. The exact nature of these relationships remains largely private, with Matt occasionally making vague references to healing and forgiveness in his public statements without divulging specific details about where things stand with individual family members. In terms of his public legacy, Matt Brown represents an interesting case study in reality television's impact on its subjects. During his time on Alaskan Bush People, the show reportedly averaged between 3 to 5 million viewers per episode at its peak, making it one of Discovery Channel's most successful programs. Matt appeared in approximately 50 episodes across 8 seasons, becoming a recognizable figure to a significant television audience. While the show has continued without him, many longtime fans still express curiosity and concern about his well-being in online forums dedicated to the program. Financially, the picture is less clear. Reality television participants' compensation varies widely, and the Browns' arrangements have never been fully disclosed. Some reports suggest that the family earned between $250,000 to $500,000 per episode during the show's peak years, though how this was distributed among family members remains unknown. Matt has alleged that he did not receive fair compensation for his participation, but the details of these financial arrangements remain private. His current financial situation appears modest but stable based on his social media presence, with income reportedly coming from odd jobs, craft sales, and possibly some social media monetization. But behind the scenes, the picture looks different. What makes Matt Brown's story particularly compelling is what it reveals about authenticity, family dynamics, and the sometimes destructive nature of reality television fame. Unlike many reality TV participants who actively seek the spotlight, the Browns, and Matt in particular, seem to have stumbled into celebrity almost accidentally. The show that made them famous presented an idealized version of their lifestyle that, by many accounts including Matt's own statements, diverged significantly from reality. This disparity created unique pressures, especially for Matt, as he struggled with addiction issues while maintaining the image of the capable wilderness expert. The tension between public persona and private reality is a common theme in celebrity stories, but it takes on additional complexity in family-based reality shows. For Matt, disagreements weren't just professional conflicts, but deeply personal family matters played out against the backdrop of a multi-million-dollar television production. His journey since leaving the show suggests someone working to reclaim his narrative and identity after years of having it shaped by producers, viewers, and the demands of creating entertaining television. In the end, this isn't just a story about a reality TV star or even about Alaskan Bush people. It's about authenticity, recovery, and the courage to step away from a situation that no longer serves your well-being, even when that situation comes with fame and financial benefits. Matt Brown's ongoing journey represents something universally relatable: the search for genuine self-knowledge and peace after periods of turmoil and false narratives. As viewers, we're often drawn to stories of wilderness survival and family unity that shows like Alaskan Bush People present. But perhaps the more important survival story is the one that unfolds after the cameras stop rolling. The work of building a life on one's own terms after years in the public eye. For Matt Brown, that journey continues away from the spotlight, marked by the daily work of sobriety, creativity, and rebuilding connections on more authentic terms. While the mountains and forests of the Pacific Northwest remain part of Matt's life, as seen in his occasional outdoor posts, his wilderness now is more metaphorical than literal, the uncharted territory of creating an identity separate from the character millions came to know on screen. That journey, with all its challenges and small victories, may be more courageous than any of the wilderness adventures that first brought him fame. If you found Matt's story meaningful, or want to hear about other reality TV stars who've chosen different paths after leaving their shows, let us know in the comments below. Stick around, because the stories behind the stories are often the most revealing. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing for more documentaries that explore the complicated realities behind our favorite shows and the people who make them.